Hi VC, Midge here, a guy in a hat that likes to talk about records. Welcome to my fourth video. And it's not easy, this YouTube lark, is it? I mean, the last video, it was only even a response video. It took me about 3.5 hours and 50 takes before I was actually happy and managed to talk through something without slurring my words, stuttering, saying the same things over and over again. And it's really weird, isn't it, watching yourself back on a video. You pick up every single vocal mannerism, you pick up the fact that you repeat yourself endlessly and you're not as articulate as you thought you might be. Because when I think about this in my head and I think about telling you a lot about things that I want to recommend and things I'm listening to, it's all very clear and precise. And then the minute you start filming it, you end up like gibbering like a gibbon, and it's not good, is it? So hopefully you get better with time, and also I probably need to invest in some sort of free app editor of some kind, because talking for a long amount of time perfectly is virtually impossible, but it is for me anyway. I'm not a great big talker in real life anyway. I'm actually quite shy, so it's not the easiest thing for me to do, but I wanted to get another video in before Record Store Day, which is next weekend. I've got my list ready. Whether or not I'll get everything on it is another thing. I'm not going to reveal it here, just in case you get there before me. So tactical, you see, tactical. So we'll see how it goes. Every year, I've always got a list. The last couple of years, though, there's not actually been that many on it that I've wanted, to be honest with you. But this year is the opposite. I've got about 10 titles on my list. I very much doubt I'll be able to get them all. But and also, I think the prices aren't bad this year. Well, not for the stuff I want anyway, because when it gets to there's some ridiculous prices for Record Store Day. And if you feel like you're getting value for money with the packaging and things like that and the bonuses and the extras, then fair enough. But I think 9 times out of 10 you don't. But the ones on my list are all within the 20 to 25, 30 brackets. So nothing majorly expensive this year, and they're all quite obscure reissues that I like. So fingers crossed. But in the meantime, I've just pulled out some more records I've been listening to recently. There's some new releases and a couple of old ones. So we'll just take it from there. So the first one is something that's been mentioned to me quite a few times over the years. And I've never seen a copy until I think it was just before Christmas. I found a copy of it, and it's Sammy Davis Jr.'s "Something for Everyone." And I'm not a big Sammy Davis Jr. fan. I haven't got any other records by him, but this record has been mentioned to me over the years as one to pick up if you see it. And I saw a cheap copy, so I thought I'd give it a go. It was at a record fair just before Christmas, so I thought I'd try it out. And the reason why it's been recommended to me is because it's sort of like it's a one-off, one of those strange albums that established artists do that aren't like the rest of the catalogue for whatever reason, and they just stand out. So this one was one that he made for the Motown label, bizarrely enough. Whether or not he was trying to, I think it was a way of trying to revitalise his career like Elvis had done with the 68 comeback special. I think this came out in 1970. And it was obviously some sort of attempt to try and get his career back on track or get hip with the youngsters. So as you can see on the cover, he's surrounded by the ladies, and there's lots of different ladies of all different creeds, colours, religions, and that's probably where the title comes from. But whether or not there is actually something for everyone here is another matter. But I really enjoyed this album. I've really liked it. It's full of standards. So basically what you've got is things like Spinning Wheel, you've got And When I Die, and You Made Me So Very Happy, which coincidentally enough were all tracks off the first Blood, Sweat and Tears album. Apparently Sammy Davis Jr. was obsessed with the album and loved it, and so he's put 3 of the tracks from that album on here. Obviously, And When I Die is the Laura Nyro song. You Made Me So Very Happy, just it's a great song, isn't it? And you've got things like Spinning Wheel, David Clayton Thomas, his classic song. And there's been lots of like 60s and 70s interpretations of that song, which are usually quite groovy, and his is quite groovy as well, to be fair. There's You Better Sit Down Kids, which I love, which is a Sonny Bono song, and it's basically him telling, in the story, obviously, in the song, he's telling his kids that his mum and their mum and dad are getting divorced, and that they're gonna have to behave themselves, and but they're basically sitting his kids down and telling them what's going to happen from now on. It's just really one of them really cool story songs that you get in the 60s and 70s that you don't tend to get as much now. So that's good. There's a cover of a Motown song, which you'd expect them all to be Motown songs, really, but they're not. And there's the cover of Stevie Wonder's "For Once in My Life," which doesn't really do it for me, to be honest. There's also the obligatory cover of "My Way." Apparently, it wasn't thought of as Sinatra's song at this period, so I think everyone had a crack at it. Basically, I'm not convinced with the way he's done it on here. And there's obviously the obligatory "Wichita Lineman," which is one of the all-time classic songs, and he does a decent cover of it, to be fair. Also, he does a cover of "In the Ghetto," that Elvis had made his own, more or less. But he does a strange approach here. He sort of does it like in a talky sort of fashion, and the singing vocals are left to the like a soulful backing trio of vocalists. He just talks it as if it's a story. But yeah, it's quirky and it's quite good. And it finishes with "High Heel Sneakers," a really funky cover of the old blues standard. That's really good as well, to be honest. So it's one of those mixed bag albums. It's like a curio, but it has its high spots, it has its low spots. It is a very quirky album, and apparently the album absolutely bombed. So it was the only album he made for Motown. So I don't think either party was really happy with the results. This is a UK edition, single sleeve, flip black on the black Motown label. Apparently in the US it was issued on a gatefold, and it was a bit controversial because in the inner sleeve apparently there's a picture of Sammy Davis Jr. handing one of these lovely ladies a joint, which was airbrushed out, I think, for subsequent pressings. So if I ever see an American pressing, I think I'll pick that up, to be honest with you. But yeah, if you see it cheap, I would recommend picking it up, to be honest. It's a curio, and it's got some great moments and some not so great moments. I also like this lady at the back here, who I'm not sure if she's naked or not, but she's having a good time if no one else isn't. But yeah, Sammy Davis Jr., something for everyone, nearly everyone. The next one is a new release, and it's from Matt Berry. Matt Berry, obviously, comedian, actor. He's been in loads of things: IT Crowd, Toast of London, House of Fools. Really funny guy, really great actor. But also, you're probably aware that over the last 20 years or so, he's been quietly releasing albums that he's made himself. There's some confusion. I can't remember if it was the 8th or some people say it's the 10th or the 11th. He's made a lot of solo albums now, and it's not something he's really shouted about that much, to be honest with you. They seem to be like under the radar. I think he's quite happy in releasing them, and he's not heavily promoting them each time. It's just quite happy for him to reach his fan base, and that's it. But this is his most recent one. It came out this year. Again, it's a collection of. He's gone for the psychedelic type approach again. So he's annoyingly talented. So it basically he writes and records all his own songs. He plays nearly every single instrument on them, and it's quite annoying how talented he is, to be honest with you. Like I say, on this album, there's 14 tracks. There's quite a lot of material here, and it's mostly of the psychedelic approach. It's like quite a 60s heavy vibe on it, but there's like quite a lot of psychedelic effects and things like that on it. So it's firmly rooted in the 60s. There's some great tracks on here. It starts off with pardon me, an atmospheric song called "Why on Fire." "Silver Rings" is also one of my favourite songs on here. There's a great sort of male-female duet on here called "I Got a Limit," which is very 60s influence. You can imagine it being on like an Austin Powers movie. It's a great sort of stomper. It reminds me of like a song you get with Nancy Sinatra and Lee Hazelwood, where it's sort of like back and forth and they're insulting each other, and it's pretty cool, very catchy. There's "I See Monsters," which starts off as a very sort of trippy sort of vibe, and then all the instrumentation kicks in and things like that. It's obviously it's built on loads of sort of keyboard sounds because he's primarily a keyboardist. There's sort of lots of groovy organs and synthesizers and stuff. It's got very 60s sound, like I say. There's a list of instruments that he plays in here. Obviously, he's got a few people that help out, but look at that list of instruments he plays. It's just sickening. Keyboards, guitars, mellotrons, mini moogs, synthesizers, xylophone, organs, farfisa, a bass guitar as well. I always think he's a really good bass guitarist. He's quite a funky bass guitarist, but it's just, it's just annoying. It's just annoying. Oh, he got all these talents and I haven't got any. How's that fair? It's because he's got them all. It's just, annoying. But also, it's the drummer from the last album is still Craig Blundell, and he's a great drummer, really sort of busy, really funky, almost proggy as well. His drumming's fantastic. So I'm glad he stayed around for this album. This one, it's on acid jazz as usual, and it's on this lovely sky blue vinyl. And it's I think it's one of his strongest albums, to be honest. I always enjoy his albums. The only criticism I have of them is sometimes I think his vocals are mixed down, which I find surprising with someone like Matt Bowie, because obviously he's known for his voice. Whether he's a bit embarrassed about singing, but his vocals are often mixed quite low down. And it's better on this album, but, come on, Matt, sing up. And it's a great album. I love that back cover artwork as well, with all the miniatures on it and the keyboard. It's just fantastic. But yeah, I think this is one of his strongest albums. So if you haven't tried any of his albums before, really recommend checking that out. So that's Matt Berry's Heard Noises. Next, another new release, and it's the new Doves album, Constellations for the Lonely. This came out in the last couple of months too. It's the second album they've released since they reformed. Well, they never really split up, but they had like a 10-year break, and they came back with an album about 4 or 5 years ago. Really great album. They were just about to do a tour, and Jimmy Goodwin, the vocalist, had some substance issues, and he decided not to tour with them, and the momentum they'd been building sort of fell away again. So Jimmy's back with them. He's back on this album, so a lot of the vocals are handled by Jimmy on here. So I don't think he's touring with them again. I think the Williams brothers are just touring without him. So he's back, but he's not back, if you see what I mean. But this is another strong album. It did take me a while to get into it. I wasn't immediately struck by it, but I think Dove's albums do take time to grow on you and build. But again, it's the classic Dove sound. It's very filmic. It's very sort of cinematic sort of sound. They tend to build up. I wouldn't say it was gloomy. It's quite dark, and it's quite, there's an atmosphere to it. But if you know the Dove sound, you'll be pleased with this. You'll know exactly what I mean. So it's another strong album, but I do think it's a bit more of a grower, this one. It does take a bit of a time to latch onto you. My favourite songs are the opener, Renegade, which has lyrics inspired by Blade Runner. If you read the lyrics, you'll know what I mean. And also Stupid Schemes is a great song that sort of builds around like a little repeated motif on it that's really catchy. So that's a really great song as well. Great production as usual. They're so skilled. To say they're a three-piece, I know they do have help on the album, but they switch instruments. They're really good at building a mood and building a sound. And, I don't think they've made a bad album, in my opinion. In a lot of ways, I think they're quite an underrated band. But again, the only thing I would criticise on here is that you forget how good Jimmy Goodwin's vocals are. And obviously, you could understand the Williams brothers thinking, well, if he's not touring with us, we need to have a song that the crowd are familiar with, that we sing on the album. So some of the tracks, the vocals are handled by the Williams brothers. So they're not as strong. You sort of lose that edge, I think. It's just a compliment to how good Jimmy Goodwin's vocals are. So it's not a criticism of the Williams brothers. It's not as strong. I don't think the songs are not as strong without Jimmy singing on them. But again, I really recommend this album. It's got great artwork. Although it's one of those albums where I think that the inner gatefold artwork would be better for the front cover. I mean, that's a really cool inner sleeve. I don't know why it's printed upside down, but I think that would make a much better front cover myself, but didn't ask me. So this is Indies exclusive. It's on orange vinyl. and the cover's orange because I think, you know, the standard one's like a sepia type colour. But again, oh sorry, that's Caramac, just ignore him, he's not a Doves fan. It's a great album, I really recommend it. That's another new release. This is an album that I've tried on a label that I've meant to be trying for a long time now. The label's called Astral Industries, and they all have covers of this type. It's by an illustrator called, let me have a look at his name, Theo Ellsworth. He does all the covers for their releases, and as you can see, it's amazing artwork, really intricate. Must take him hours to do these things. So the label's called Astral Industries, and they specialise in sort of ambient sounding albums or soundscape type albums, and they're sort of like usually like gently drifting. A lot of them are like keyboard based, synthesizer based. And this one I picked up just to try, because I think I have got a couple of others from the label, but I've not bought anything on the label for a while, so I really like the cover of this one, so I thought I'd try it. And basically it's a double album, and basically it's all built around the concept of lucid dreams, which basically means that it's a study, and I think it's from the late 60s, in that people were observed, people's dreams were observed, and it was, some people had the talent of realizing they were in a dream and being able to take advantage of that fact or twist it slightly, or just to be aware that they were actually dreaming at the time, and then they could alter the fabric of the dream. So there's lots of examples in here. So basically it's built around a series of lectures by a Dr. Celia Green. She just talks about the premise of lucid dreams and all the different things that are arising from it, and the backing is sort of like, it's sort of a very simplistic, very ambienty, and it sort of adds to the lecture. Basically, you're listening to a lecture with like a soundscape at the back of it, and it's really clever how it's done. So I think her vocals are manipulated slightly because they sound a little bit dreamy, but you're basically listening to a lecture about the concept of lucid dreams. It's really interesting, like how people can sort of be aware that they're in a dream and change the fabric of it to their advantage. They can sort problems, or they can sleep with people they've always fancied, things like that. And it's just basically around the concept of lucid dreams. And also it's sort of, you know, it talks about the dangers of lucid dreams, in which they were saying that, you know, it can be a thing where you can't tell the difference between reality and dreams. You have to be careful, although they've never had anybody reportedly jump in front of a train to see if they could stop it, or jump out of a window to see if they could fly, which I think is stretching it a little bit. But funnily enough, I've been listening to this a lot, and then a lot at night as well on my headphones, but I have to say I haven't had any lucid dreams, to be honest with you. I mean, I'd like to have dreams where I walked into a record shop and just, I didn't have to pay for anything, I could just take everything out with me, but it's never happened. But yeah, I've really enjoyed this album, and I'm going to pick up hopefully more on the Astral Industries label. If you want something a little bit different, I highly recommend this. Check out the Astral Industries Bandcamp, that's really good as well. Like I said, the artwork's top notch, it's just superb. And you'll see some familiar names on there if you're into sort of like ambient and soundscape type music. There's some artists on there you might recognise. But yeah, Lucid Dreams, self-titled, on Astral Industries, highly recommend that. Cheers. Oh, that's better. Next, an album from 1973 that I've been after for a long time, and they've just reissued it. It's from krautrock band Ashra Temple, and this is a 1973 album called Starring Rosie. And the reason why I've been after this album for a long time is because I had a track on this that somebody put on a tape for me years ago called Laughter and Loving, and I always loved that track. And to get a hold of an original of this is just, it's really expensive album to get hold of. Obviously Ashra Temple are a band that sort of do like space rock, experimental rock, and sort of like they stretch out a lot. There's a lot of experimentation, it's quite cosmic sounding. But this one is very different to that. I think it's the last Ashra Temple album, I could be wrong. But basically, it's built around the guitarist Manuel Gottsching and obviously his girlfriend at the time, Rosie. Very cute, Rosie there. And this one gets frowned upon quite a lot by krautrock collectors because it's quite mainstream. It's not very experimental. It's not very spacey. It's quite mainstream in a way, in that it's just basically a showcase for Manuel Gottsching's guitar, basically. So it's quite easygoing, it's quite melodic, it's not particularly the album you'd sit down and take drugs to like they did in the 70s, but I love it. And the first track, especially Laughter Loving, it's an 8-minute track, and it's just basically very jaunty, very sort of light guitar instrumental, and it's just great. Just check it out on YouTube. It's a really great track. Bizarrely, it sounds a bit like the Allman Brothers in a way. It's just got like a really upbeat, really sort of light, summery sort of feel to it, and you've got Rosie herself laughing like a maniac through it. Don't let that put you off, though. It's quite cool. But that's the centerpiece. That's why I wanted this album, because I've always loved that track, and it's great to see this being reissued. The rest of the album, it's like it's not really many extended tracks. And Laughter Loving's about 8 minutes. There's another song on it called Interplay of Forces, which is sort of like that's the closest it comes to like a spacey sort of space vibe track on it. So that's more like the Asherah Temple of old. That's more like a Pink Floydy type spacey instrumental. But it's just a great album. There's lots of layered guitar. It's, there's wah-wah guitar, acoustic guitar, lots of effects, lots of pedals. And like I say, it's just mainly a showcase for Manuel's playing. There's obviously drums and bass on here. Dieter Dirks plays bass. I think he produces the album as well. I think, didn't he become a member of the Scorpions at some point, or produce for the Scorpions later? I'm not sure on that, but basically, I love this album. It's been great to pick up a reissue copy of it. There's a track on here about which is a call and response between Manuel and Rosie. It's called Daydream, and it's about a gypsy queen that lived in Rainbow Land, which of course it is because it's 1973, and I think by law you had to have some sort of song about gypsies or rainbows or things like that on your album. So that's and in fact there's another instrumental called The Fairy Dance. So again, it's 1973, you've got to have that on an album, haven't you? So otherwise I think you were kicked out of the Musicians Union. But the last song's called Bring Me Up, and again that's sort of more like a straightforward rock song. But like I say, this album's frowned upon a lot by a lot of krautrock collectors because it's not really like experimental. It's quite mainstream. Perhaps they thought they were selling out a bit, but I think it's great. It's really light, really summery, really airy, loads of guitar on it, and it's just a great 70s album. I love it. This reissue, quite expensive. I think it's around £35, which is not something I usually spend that sort of money on a single album. But to be fair, it's well packaged. It's got some inserts with it. It's got some of Manuel's notations for the music. That's for The Fairy Dance. And it opens up, and I don't know how you follow that if you're a musician, but that looks pretty cool. The notations he made for the tracks, brilliant. And also there's a poster of Manuel and the lovely Rosie jamming in the studio, which is really cool. And also the vinyl comes on, I think they call it pearl, but I think I'd be more tempted to call it hand wash vinyl, if you can see what I mean. It's sort of like got a really sort of shimmery type effect on it, like someone's gone bonkers with the hand wash in the studio. But yeah, it's a great reissue. It's on the MG Art label, which I presume is Manuel Gottsching's own label. Sorry if I butchered your name, Manuel. There's been quite a few Asherah Temple reissues in the last couple of years, so I presume he's got the rights back and he's reissuing them on his own label, but I'd highly recommend getting this album. It's great. Ignore what the snobs say. It's a great album, and I've really been enjoying that. Really cool. So Ashra Temple, starring the lovely Rosie, 1973. And the last one I'm going to do is another new release, and it's on a label that I absolutely adore. It's a UK label called Castles in Space, and they specialise in electronica, and sort of like a lot of homegrown artists, a lot of bedroom artists. They specialise in doing vinyl editions. The artwork's always superb. There's usually a coloured vinyl edition, and the it's just spot on. I'm a big fan of electronic music, so it's right up my alley. And I tend to buy nearly everything on the label. So this is their first release of 2025. It's by a man who calls himself Apter, and this album is called The Pool, and it's a collection of electronic instrumental tracks, and the artwork is superb. Gatefold sleeve. So artwork is by Zeke Clough, who's done a few other Castles in Space covers. So it's kind of like pixel computer art. It's brilliant. Love that artwork. And the vinyl is pretty cool as well. And it's on pull coloured vinyl. Look at that. Superb. So the album itself is a collection of electronic tracks, like I've said. It's really lovely to listen to. It's sublime. It's really gentle. There's a lot of sort of like obviously it's a heavily keyboard and synthesizer based, but there's an element of guitar as well, and there's some nice guitar lines in there that you don't often get on electronic albums. And there's some really intricate sort of like percussion on it. It's sort of like really sort of low key, really sort of bubbly type, and it does sound a bit underwaterishly. That is a word. It is now. Tracks. So it's just got a really sublime, smooth, relaxing environment. It's a great headphone album. A great album to listen to at night. And I highly recommend checking out the Castles in Space. Again, they've got a Bandcamp. It's worth going through some of the artists on the label, and I'm sure I'll talk about more if I carry on doing these videos on the label Castles in Space. Great label, great album. So that's Apter's The Pool that came out. I'm not sure if this final edition is sold out now, but I think you still can get it from some outlets. But well worth checking out on the Castles in Space Bandcamp. It's a great, sublime, melodic electronic album. And let's just slip in an extra one if I got a chance. Let me see if I can quickly find it. Yeah. Basically, recently I've been reading this book. I'm slow to it because everyone else has cottoned on to this. I've been reading this book about McCartney, which is absolutely brilliant. Really good book. If you're a McCartney fan, I highly recommend it. It goes into minute anal detail about the recording sessions and for these solo albums. It starts obviously when the Beatles split. Can't recommend it enough. If you like all the sort of intricate details, recording sessions and things like that, it'll be right up your alley. So I've been reading this, and like any good music books, it leads you back to the records as well. So I've been going through McCartney and Ram. Obviously, Ram's one of my all-time favourite albums. And the great thing about this book is it puts the albums into a timeline. So basically, it contextualizes them. So you sort of, it gives you the detail what McCartney was going through at the time when he was making these albums, because you forget, what was going on in his life at the time. So obviously I'm up to Wildlife at the moment. So it goes through the Beatles split up, all the problems he was having with the other Beatles and the financial things he was going through and trying to get it all sorted. So it's great in terms of it puts the albums in a framework of his life, so you can understand sometimes what inspired the songs, why it was recorded that way, and blah, blah, blah. But like I said, I've been through McCartney. Again, I've been listening to Ram a lot. And I've got up to Wildlife, which was released in 1971. McCartney fans will know the fact that this album isn't really talked about very often because it's not thought of in a great way, really. Released in 1971, it was the first Wings album, so it was the first album where Paul thought, I don't want to be a solo artist, I'd rather be in a band again. He obviously missed the framework of being in the band, so he called up Denny Lane, ex of the Moody Blues, and Dennis Sewell, the drummer, who he'd also played on Ram and he'd known quite well, and obviously old Linda. Now, this was controversial in terms of she was a member of the band, so basically he was presenting and saying, Linda's my wife, but she's also a member of the band, so he taught the rudiments of playing keyboard, and this was his way of introducing her, although she did, obviously, the Ram album was co-credited to her, which again caused lots of problems with his publishing companies because they were saying that Linda couldn't possibly write these songs. And Paul had to make a case for saying that she did write songs, she did co-compose, and I think it's interesting in a way in terms of how Paul built these early albums, because he was very much like, Linda is my new John Lennon. She's there. She might not write all the songs, but she'll contribute lyrics, she'll contribute ideas, and she's a great sounding board. And I think that's what he really missed from not having John Lennon around anymore. So he did see her in that light, that she was incredibly important in composing and helping him produce these albums. So this was released, as I said, in 1971. Ram amazingly got bad reviews at the time. Even though he put a lot of work into making Ram and a lot of heart and soul into it. So this album is strange in a way, because it was almost sort of like it was inspired, I think, by Bob Dylan's album. Was it New Morning? When he recorded it very quickly. I think he recorded it in a week. And I think Paul had the same idea. He was inspired by that and he thought he'd do the same. Although it's very misleading because this album wasn't recorded in a week. It was put down relatively quickly, but then obviously it got to the point where Paul was thinking, well, I need to overdub this, I need to flesh this out, I need to make this sounding bigger. So in a way it was a bit of a cheat. I mean, I think he always described it as an album that was recorded very quickly. I think he writes the liner notes on the back under a pseudonym. And I think he says that in 3 days they laid down the tracks, which is maybe true. I think it was only a couple of days, and they were very under-rehearsed. I think they only had 1 day of rehearsing at his studio in Scotland on his farm for the band to learn these songs. And I think they went straight to Abbey Road and they started laying them down. But I think Paul did return to the tracks quite a lot to beef them up and add extra sounds to them. So he was cheating a little bit in a way, but it's not a great album, I'll be totally honest with you. It isn't a great album. And listening to it again after quite a long time, I've not sort of changed my opinions of it. Although no McCartney album is truly bad in my opinion. Is that right? I don't want to think about that in a moment, but there probably is one. Give my regards to Broad Street. But that's another video, isn't it? But basically, the thing I like about early Paul McCartney albums is because he just got married to Linda. He was having children, and there's sort of like an air of sort of homespun sort of quaintness, and just getting back to basics and being a family and being a father, and and I like that about his early albums. They are quite quaint in a way, as that front cover shows. It's sort of like, we're getting back to nature, and he bought the farm in Scotland, and he's just being a family, being a husband, being someone normal perhaps for the first time in his life. But the thing I also like about early McCartney albums, which is probably quite controversial, is I really like Linda McCartney's vocals. I think they really add that sort of charm to these early albums. A lot of people got criticisms of Linda that she can't sing or she couldn't play keyboards properly, but I love her vocals. I love the way her and Paul sound together on these early albums, the backing vocals, and I think there's a real charm to these early albums. It's only got 8 tracks on it. Obviously, we'll start with the bad ones. Mumbo, it's sort of like a wordless jam that starts the album. Doesn't really go anywhere. Bit Bop's the same. It's sort of like a catchy tune. And Paul admitted a lot of the songs, he used to have home songs, I think he used to call them, where basically he would sing songs to the kids, and they probably should have stayed like that. But I think a few of them crept into his albums, and Bit Bop was one. He sang it to his kids. They loved the sounds and the strange words. but whether or not this should have gone on an album, I don't know really. You've got the reggae cover, which is another unusual thing for a Paul McCartney album, of the Love Is Strange song, the Mickey and Sylvia song. That's really charming. I really like the reggae feel to that. And it ends with Wildlife. Side one ends with Wildlife, which is sort of like an early sort of animal cruelty song, and talking about how animals should have more rights and things like that. So obviously that was Linda's influence creeping in, and something that he'd follow in a big way throughout his life. But the song doesn't really go anywhere to me. It's a bit ploddy, and it's quite long as well. But the second side, I think, is much stronger. Some People Never Know is a beautiful little ballady song that Paul and Linda sing. I Am Your Singer Again. I love that song. Again, a lot of vocals from Linda on that one, and it's a really charming song. Tomorrow, that follows it, that's a really jaunty, upbeat song, catchy, that McCartney just can toss off in his sleep. I love those three songs. I think they make the album worthwhile in a way. It finishes with Dear Friend, which would it's like a response song to John Lennon, because obviously there was a few bits and bats between them about coded messages in the song slagging each other off. You've got How Do You Sleep on Imagine and Too Many People on Ram. And I think this was Paul sort of saying to him, you know, look, let's just stop this. Although the song is I'm not being funny, the song is poor. It doesn't really make any sense. You can't really tell what he's trying to say to John in that, other than pour a wine and let's stop arguing. But the song's not great. There's like an orchestral arrangement. I think he thought more of the song than it actually was. So there's a big orchestral arrangement on it, which doesn't really suit the song, I think, and it tries to make it more than it is. But yeah, well, that's my review of it basically. I mean, it's not an album you return to a lot, but there's three good songs on here, maybe four. So, but it's nice to listen to. Like I say, a lot of the early albums are charming. They're quite upbeat and summery. But I don't know. The critics slaughtered this again, and I'm not really sure if Paul had got a defence for this. He obviously wants to start a new band, but this sounds like it was tossed off very quickly, to be honest, which it was in a way, but it demanded more, and the critics wanted more, the fans wanted more. It was a bit lazy sounding, really, but obviously, this was just the start of the band. This is an original copy. It's a bit worn. I don't know if I'll ever replace it. There was an archive reissue of it in Paul McCartney's archive collection. The bonus track didn't really inspire me to pick it up, to be honest. Another interesting thing about this album is the photographic labels. Obviously, this is an Apple record, but Paul didn't want it on the Apple label. Apparently, because of the financial things that were going on and the arguments with the Beatles, he didn't want his album to be to remind him of the Beatles, or to remind the fans that he's part of the Beatles empire. So I think there was quite a lot of discussions with various parties about whether he could do that or not. I think the other Beatles wanted it to be on a prominent Apple label, and he refused. So I think it delayed the release of the album initially. And if you look on the back cover, in extremely tiny writing there, it says an Apple record. So I think that was Paul's only concession to saying that, he was still an Apple Records artist, and he really wants to get away from it. So 1971, Wings, Wildlife, worth picking up cheap, put it that way. But I'm enjoying going through McCartney's albums again, so I'm sure that I think the next one's Red Rose Speedway. So as I go through the book and it reaches that, I'll pick it up. But yeah, I've been enjoying listening to it again, to be fair. But it's not a classic by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm going to leave it there. A long video, sorry about that. I'd be amazed if anyone's got to the end of it or all of this. So I'm hoping to do more videos. I'm not sure if it's really me, if it's really something that I'm good at. Hopefully get better with time. And this one's not been too bad because it's only taken a couple of takes. So getting there. So I'll sign off for now. Hopefully do another video soon. Good luck to everybody on Record Store Day. I hope you get all that you want and you don't have to queue too early and it doesn't sell out. A bit like being when you're in Greggs and you're in the queue and the bloke in front of you gets the last sausage roll, and it's so annoying. You're going to have to wait at least 20 minutes or you just give up. That's a bit like Record Store Day, isn't it? And you're thinking you're getting to the front, and then some guy gets the last copy, and you're thinking, shall I mug him or shall I just, it's a tough day. But it's also a very exciting day, and record shops need our support, and they're not just for Record Store Day, they're for life. So good luck to everybody, and hopefully I'll do a video soon of what I've managed to pick up. I'm looking forward to seeing all yours. So I'll leave it at that for now. So thanks for watching, really appreciate it. Hopefully see you soon. Midge out.